Peace and understanding. Good morning, guys. It's homecoming week at Southern University. And for my 2 o'clock class, we've been kind of had some slip ups here. So I'm on campus and I'm going to impart the lecture now on chapter 4. We will be having a quiz Tuesday on chapter 4, and chapter 4's assignment, the textbook work, will be due then. All midterm grades have been posted. You can go on Banner to access your midterm grades. They're there, and if you have any questions, concerns, or comments in reference to your grade, we can correct that if need be and if changes are necessary. But let me go through chapter 4, which is a small chapter, and extract the more relevant information that you are definitely going to need to be aware of as we discuss the classical age of China and the Shang dynasty and the Zhou dynasty. It's pronounced Zhou, however, it's spelled Z-O-U-H, which oftentimes you're going to get different pronunciations with these languages. As I alluded to earlier, you're looking at Asia and China, a geography which is on one side surrounded by mountains, a body of water, and to the north, the Yellow River. The Yellow River is where the first dynasty of the classical age, the Shang dynasty, evolved around the year 9000 BCE. They began to utilize agriculture and crops from the flooding of the Yellow River. Around 5000 BCE, they began to implement the domestication of animals. 7000 BCE, domestication of animals, and 5000 BCE, the creation of villages, settlements, and or tribes. Small family groups uniting, coming out of the state of nature of solitary man, moving into more formidable groups. The Shang dynasty was a Bronze Age society which thrived. There are small traces, well, not small, but there are really no traces of a written handwriting by early Neolithic Chinese Asian groups of the Shang dynasty. However, there is information that makes reference to cultural and societal practices that leaves us remnants of their legacy and what they did. The Shang dynasty, one of the most prominent cities was Anyang, which was excavated and brought about a plethora of scientific and archaeological information that has helped us to understand how they lived. The Shang dynasties lived there and dominated for more than 2 centuries. And we know that a dynasty is simply a dynastic family, a family which rules and keeps it in the bloodline, keeps it in within the family structure. A particular family is ruling, the ruling family. And then Yang was the center of their power. The Shang king, consequently, was also, he had a situation of duality where he served as the king and also the highest religious figure, which is the high priest. They worshiped the high god Dai, and as similar to African thought, They believed in ancestor worship and that the ancestors could intercede on their behalf. Well, Professor Johnson, what does intercede mean? Basically, to vouch for or to intervene, to help, to assist in one's endeavors or on your part. So they believed that the king slash high priest could make sacrifices to the ancestors, as well as that he also had the ability of interpretation of dreams, which was a very powerful component. And this is still in the Shang dynasties. The Shang dynasties had a feudalistic type system set up where the workers or farmers were obligated to work for the Shang aristocrats, the Shang uh, landlord. The landlord, the owner of the land, would allow the peasants, the fiefs, the serfs to live on the land and protect them in exchange for their labor, their toil, their blood, sweat, and tears. The Shang kings, as well as the aristocrats, operated in slavery and believed in the enslavement of individuals captured from war. And some of these people would also be used for sacrifices. The development of handwriting, the great grandparent, if you will, of the modern caricatures that we see in Chinese and Japanese handwriting, comes from a Chinese script called logographic. And logographic in and of itself is a word which is represented by a symbol instead of a alphabet that spells a word to give a more precise meaning. The symbol meant a word, which left it open for conjecture, which left it open for some ambiguity to be present as it relates to a clear and concise meaning of a word. So logographic is the symbols that meant words. Now, the Zhou dynasty ultimately overran, which was a small outcap of the Shang dynasty to the north. The Zhou dynasty actually came in and overtook the Shang dynasty with some mercenaries and a uprising of slaves from the Shang dynasty. This insurrection was led by the King Wu. Some of you may be familiar with the Wu-Tang Clan. King Wu led this uprising and overthrew the Shang king, which in an effort to not be disgraced, he committed suicide and burned the Shang palace down, where they had positions of leadership for over 2 centuries. So King Wu overran the Shang dynasty and they imploded from within slavery, the peculiar institution of slavery, and how uprisings and conflict of interest occur, where individuals arise and overthrow the dominant culture and the powers that be. They are overthrown. So the Zhou dynasty had excellent record keeping, and the production of handwriting brought about the ability of the Chinese to keep possible bureaucracy and record keeping in place. And literacy was important there in this society. But the Book of Documents, which was written around 900 before the year 900 before the Common Era, we look at a description of conquests of the Shang by the various rulers, a history of the Zhou dynasty. So the Zhou dynasty has what is called the mandate of heaven, which the Zhou king was also called the son of heaven. Again, you're looking at these dynastic entities and they're using the mandate of heaven as a form, according to the text, and it is my contention as well, as a form of propaganda. Propaganda being a system of half-truths used and that can be manipulated to one's own position. Propaganda. I gave the example of propaganda being all black males between 18 and 21 would typically go to jail. There's a high influx of that. Black women, young women may be abusers of the system or may be on welfare or may have multiple child or trying to get a house voucher. All these things can be used as propaganda. Or we need to create a wall here in America due to the fact that the Mexicans are taking our job, the immigrants are coming in, etc., etc. Those are examples, tangible examples of what we see today here in the United States of America. However, the propaganda is not based in fact. So with the mandate of heaven, according to the text, it said the Zhou rulers use propaganda to win over its subjects. So you can see how it would be very easily utilized as the mandate of heaven or the divine right of kings or any of these other situations that specifically say that God has verbally chosen or in any other way chosen a particular people to rule or lead in an audible voice. In an audible voice. So again, we look at things that can be validated and rejected, and until there is information that supports this contention, we have to look at it as conjecture. So the mandate from heaven was a Chinese political ideology that was used by the Zhou kings to support and legitimize their position or leadership. Also, you have the Book of Songs, which is very important around 900 BCE as well, which contains some Chinese poetry and hymns for religious ceremony. A hymn is a religious song. Those of you that are practicing Roman Catholics know about the various hymns with the pipe organs played. Those of you who subscribe to the Black Baptist Church know that they are renowned for the singing and the church musicals that occur. But the Book of Songs was that. So you have a transition in the Zhou dynasty where they begin to thrive in the mastery and creation of iron, transitioning into the Iron Age and leaving from the Bronze Age. So the societies began to prosper. They began to thrive and people became rich. Their economy was spurred, prompted on, rolled on. The Zhou dynasty, the kings had a odd practice of burying the living with the dead. If a king had multiple wives, oftentimes the king would be laid to rest with his wife or his wives. This period began to decline in the middle of the Zhou period. Now you have coming at the end of these dynastic eras a period of time when when the geography became fragmented and the remnants of the Shang and the Zhou dynasty were broken down into seven states. And it was called the Warring States period from 403 to 221 before the Common Era. And these China, they were at war with each other, not unlike the Civil War. not unlike the Revolutionary War, the Spanish-American War, the French-Indian War. Any of these wars are brought about by religious conflicts or just the exchange of ideas or positional conflicts, the control of information and what's right and what's wrong. And ultimately, out of the 7 states, the state of Chin, it's spelled Qin. You will see it in the text. However, it is pronounced Chin. And Chin ultimately became the dominating state. And the king of Chin did away with the aristocrats. And the class stratification was based on military service. Those individuals that were able to strive and did not have antithetical positions against war, but yet were warriors. They believed in the sword. So in the Warring States period, you have a philosophical era known as the 100 Schools of Thought, which was a prime time era. This is a part of the Warring States period, the 100 Schools of Thought, which gave birth to Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. They are present in the textbook. Confucianism is not a religion. However, Confucius was from the state of Wu. He had his upbringing during the Warring States period, but Confucius was an advisor and a philosopher. He worked hard to help assist those in positions of leadership and ways to make government run smoothly. He focused more on the relationships between families and how this would make a society run more smoothly. And Confucius, according to Confucius, that there are 5 levels of society: ruler and king over citizen or subject, husband to wife, sibling relationships, parent to child relationship, and friend to friend. And if you focus on having or doing the best that you can in these levels of relationship with a focus on morality and humanity, that relationship, that government will work itself out, and there would really be no need for religion. It was Confucius's contention that the term Ren, which means humanity, and Confucius stated that Ren is a person of humanity who cares about others and acts accordingly. If we strive to work hard on these levels, then we can attain that humanity according to Confucius, that leaders must be moral people of character. In addition to that, Confucius's followers would make notes or copy, handwrite the things that he alluded to, and it was compiled in a document called the Analytics. The Analytics is a compilation of the sayings of Confucius by his followers. So Confucius believed in the moral leadership and the inner workings of society and advising people in leadership how to be good leaders. Confucius also encouraged individuals to study, and in his time frame he created what could be the forerunner of a modern civil service test, where people that were in positions of leadership had to be qualified. There was a rubric in place that something had to be done to decide or decipher if people in position of leadership were able to lead. So Confucius was a virtuous person, talked about the moral position of leaders, as well as the 5 levels of relationships in society. Now, Confucius had a major follower named Meniscus. Meniscus was a gentleman who continued for 3 centuries to push forward what Confucius laid out. I think it was from 370 to 300 BCE. That's roughly 3 centuries where Meniscus continued the vision and work of Confucius. Lastly, Confucius had the idea of filial piety, which states that one should respect their parents and their elders. That is to be held in high esteem in that culture. Typically enough, you will probably subscribe to that belief because the Bible says that honor thy fathers and mothers that thy years may be multiplied, and you hearing respect your parents and your elders, you can say, well, that's right, because that's something that you already believe. So that's something that can be easily accepted. Okay? Filial piety, the highest respect for one's mother, fathers, and elders. The second school of thought is Taoism, who was brought about by a philosopher named Lao Tzu, and it's Laozi, and he created the Tao, the Taoist ideal. You know, you may be familiar with the yin and the yang symbol, and the Tao is defined as the way. The Tao is defined as the way. A current theme in this belief is that the mystical superiority of yielding over assertion and the silence of words. The way that can be discussed is not the constant way. The yin and the yang can be defined as basically complementary poles of opposing forces. Complementary poles of opposing forces. And in the yin and the yang, it is believed that the observation of nature, that social phenomenon as well as natural phenomenon can be described and learned from. And since man is a part of nature, that he himself is entwined and nothing is separate, that we are inextricably connected to nature and to our position in it. There's an ecosystem in place. We need oxygen, plants, and carbon dioxide. There's a food chain. Certain animals eat certain animals, that we are inextricably connected for the thriving and existence for this realm to stay present and relevant. But the Tao believed also that the way should be follow the natural order. You need a negative and a positive. You need for a plug to operate, you need it to be negative and positive. The book says that the yang is feminine, receptive, and negative. The yin is feminine, negative, and receptive. The yang is masculine, strong, and yielding. Two men cannot have a child according to the natural order of things. It's not. Don't take that out of context. It's not about who you love or how you love. Anatomically, this cannot be accomplished. And that is an example of the natural order of things. Taoism also have had some, and it's still relevant in China, different Asian images or myths. The myth of the dragon, the myth of the phoenix. We know the dragon is a Chinese symbol, a somewhat reptilian creature that can breathe fire. The phoenix is the bird of fire that crashes to the ground and is a symbol of resurrection. That's what the phoenix alludes to, is a symbol of resurrection. Now, lastly, you had the concept of legalism. Those who subscribed to legalism were considered to be legalists. This was established in the kingdom of Qin, in the state of Qin, after the development of their power at the close of the Warring States period. They believed that military strength was there. Here are some of the basic principles or pillars of legalism. Legalism firstly saw no value in intellectual or private opinion. Legalism also stated that right and wrong lead to weakness and disorder, and there are no laws independent of the wishes of the ruler. Now, you should be able to see that this gave birth to what other mindsets? A dictatorship, a authoritarian society that does not focus on the wishes of the few, of the many, but the wishes of the few. The Warring States era period also allowed for social stratification to be based on military accomplishments. So this is another portion that can be recognized. And there's more that you will need to read in the chapter about these legalists and legalism. But they also believe that man is inherently evil and that he is in need of strict and stern laws. Without strict and stern laws, man would be left to his own vices and implode. That this position supports the stance that mankind, if left to himself, would not help, would not have humanity. And Taoism was a direct response to Confucianism, and legalism was also a direct response to Confucianism as well. Legalism takes the position, too, that a leader does not need to be moral, he needs to be strong. So that's the gist of that chapter. Closing that out, you need to monitor the video. I want everybody to be safe with homecoming. And please enjoy yourselves. Have a great day. Go Jaguars. And as I said, the midterm grades are posted. And you also will have a test Tuesday online on chapter 4. Any issues that you are encountering, please go to Moore Hall and check with the IT department. They can assist with the lockdown browser and helping you so your test can be accessible to you. Just trying to make sure I'm not leaving anything else out. That's it. So I will see you guys Thursday of next week. We will not have class Tuesday due to the test being online, or Monday. So please govern yourselves accordingly, and your assignment for the Chapter 4 review is due. Have a great weekend and be very safe. And remember, always investigate the information you receive. If it is indeed the truth, it should stand the test of investigation. Peace.